Here's my new engagement window, and I only made a few changes to it by adding some additional codes, some deactivation links, and some more exclusive links. So the basic structure has stayed the same. I still have the exclusive links between my three main codes: positive engagement, negative engagement, and non-engagement. So which means once one is running, if I push a new one or push something that will activate one of the other two codes, it will automatically turn off the code that was running. Non-engagement and negative engagement mostly stayed the same. I did add a few extra descriptive text labels that I can use, and I probably will continue to add other text labels as I start coding and I realize there are more examples of negative and non-engagement. So right now, each of the text labels are in here. They are linked with an activation link as well as an exclusive link, so that I won't actually press negative engagement or non-engagement. I would push one of the text labels, like an unnecessary repetition of a task, for example. And when I press that code, that text label, it will activate the negative engagement code. Same thing goes for non-engagement. I have 4 different examples of that, and they will activate and put a text label in non-engagement. The reason why I didn't make any of these text labels over here codes themselves is because none of these things I necessarily want to measure duration for. So I might want to count how many times a student does certain things, but I can use some script writing later to count how many times within negative engagement a student treated the iPad aggressively. So I would be able to write codes where I count this particular label within the negative engagement code. So they don't really need to be codes themselves because I don't need to measure a length of time for any of these things. Positive engagement is a little bit more complicated, mostly because this is where we hope the students are for most of the time. So the main code is positive engagement, and there's another minor code that is linked to positive engagement called exploratory engagement. And I mentioned this earlier, that it's a different type of engagement, but it still falls under a positive type of engagement. So what I have here, very similar to negative and non-engagement, I have 4 different examples of exploratory engagement that I can count how many times the student does this within exploratory engagement. So I would click any one of these text labels, which would activate exploratory and would also activate positive engagement. Each of these text labels is linked with an exclusive link as well, so that those labels are only applied to exploratory engagement. So other codes that I've created now, I've basically broken up positive engagement into 2 types besides exploratory. Either the student's receiving information from the e-workbook or they're outputting information somehow. So I have those 2 codes if I want to measure how much of the positive engagement is receiving and how much is outputting. I can measure durations with those because they are codes. Receiving information, there are 2 ways that the student can receive that are involving some of the assistive tech features that we're building into our e-workbook. That is utilizing the audio prompts that we put in. So as a student is in the e-workbook, there are little audio buttons that they can push to have directions read aloud or extra explanations and scaffolds built in. So this code itself would activate receiving information and therefore activate positive engagement. We also will have some built-in review videos, and we're going to want to see how much time the student is spending watching review videos or listening to audio prompts. That's why those are their own codes. Other things that aren't really related to audio prompts or reviewing video are just navigating the e-workbook and reading in the e-workbook. And both of those are linked with an activation link to receiving information with exclusive links as well. For output, there's a couple of different types of output. That's kind of the point of the e-workbook, that the student can have multiple means of expressing themselves. So I've kind of broken this into 4 main text labels where they're answering questions using a writing or drawing widget, answering questions in a non-writing format. So some of them are quizzes that they can press and just use a touchscreen for answers, or maybe moving manipulatives. There could be a media-based response, such as their own voice, or they might take a picture and insert it right into the e-workbook. And taking a screenshot After they complete like a little mini worksheet within there, we often ask that the students take a screenshot with the iPad. And they can do that in one of two ways, either with assistive touch turned on, so they don't have to, it's not as tricky for them to push both the home button and the main button at the same time, or the traditional way here. So all of these are linked with that same way where they're activation links to activate output and activate positive, but they also have exclusive links to make sure that the codes only go under output information. So that's why these extra two exclusive links are here. Even though assistive touch and traditional will activate, take a screenshot, they need to be linked to the code output information. The last thing to explain are all of these deactivation links that I have going. For negative engagement and non-engagement, those are the only codes, and when positive engagement is turned on, it will automatically stop one of these two from running. So I didn't need any deactivation links there. However, underneath positive engagement, I have several codes. I have 5 different codes here that any one of them could be running. So then if the student went from watching a review video to unnecessarily repeating the task, maybe they were just trying it again and again for no good reason. They were trying something just because they liked to play with the iPad. It would turn on negative engagement, which would turn off positive engagement, but it wouldn't automatically turn off review video. So what I needed to do was create deactivation links that anytime negative engagement or non-engagement gets activated, it would turn off any of these other codes that are running over here. The exclusive link will accomplish that for the positive engagement, but it won't have accomplished that for all of the other codes within that positive engagement hierarchy. So I think this is a good start right here. Like I said earlier, I will probably be adding new text labels underneath each of these categories as I discover them when I'm coding. But at least now I have a good structure that should turn things on and off. This was much, much faster for me to do than was for the independence, because now I learned a little bit more about these activation and deactivation links, and it was actually really quick. I did this within 10 minutes. I restructured this. So the more you learn and the more you play, the faster it is for you to do these things.